Rodgers spoke out yesterday on the Jim Rome Show about the position that players are in against the league and Roger Goodell. Terrell Suggs earlier today had some strong comments on that subject, and he shared them with Mike and Mike.
From our perspective, he got his favors, and he's got the kind of guys he likes to talk to and hang out with and just, kind of chop it up with. But a lot of us ain't those guys. A lot of us ain't under center making $20 million a year. So we're not his favorite.
If that is the case, we have nobody to blame but ourselves, because we had the opportunity in the CBA to make some legitimate changes to that. And I think there's probably too much pressure to come back to a deal when we had all the power on our side. And, that was something that we should have had negotiated into the CBA, because this shouldn't be someone who's the judge, jury, and executioners.
Stephen A., what's going on here?
Well, what's going on here is a couple of things. When you look at Terrell Suggs, he's basically saying that, Roger Goodell, he ain't down with the brothers. I mean, there's just no, that's the way I interpreted it. Now, I've interviewed and spoken to Terrell Suggs on several occasions. I don't know him that well, obviously, so I can't definitively say what he meant, but I can tell you how it came across to me. Mm-hmm. Roger Goodell ain't too down with the brothers. That's what he's saying. Taking it a step further, let's understand a couple of things. As it pertains to what Aaron Rodgers had to say, I think he's absolutely right. He had an opportunity to negotiate the collective bargaining agreement. I would remind everybody that with the collective bargaining agreement, if I recall correctly, there was one standout. There was one person that voted against agreeing to the collective bargaining agreement. And that person would happen to be Ryan Clark, our colleague here at ESPN. As far as I'm concerned, he is the only person that has a gripe. Everybody else should shut the hell up. I don't want to hear it. It is what it is, because even if you were to agree to the deal, did you have to do 10 years? What happened to 5? Who signs a 10-year deal? Do you realize how much life changes in a decade? But you're the and you're the NFL Players Association. You agreed to a 10-year deal. Now, this is not from me. This is from a number of people familiar with collective bargaining negotiations, experts on it, quite frankly. They believe that the NFL Players Association got taken to school, and that all of this stuff, these retroactive actions against the league, are a product of you really getting you pushed around at the negotiating table, getting a deal that wasn't deemed great for the players, and now you're trying to revisit it every chance you get. I don't know all the particulars, even though I know my collective bargaining. Bottom line is that I'm just going to look at it at that. That's for the Players Association to answer. When it comes to T-Sizzle, Terrell Suggs, what I would say is, in terms of his direct comments about Roger Goodell, so what? Listen, this notion that I'm some fan of Roger Goodell's. I do like Roger Goodell in terms of the job that he's done overall. He's made mistakes, but I think by and large, I don't mind him at all. I really, really don't. And what I'm saying, but I don't know the man. I've never even met the man, I would tell you this. Roger Goodell, to me, plays by big boy rules. And I think we all need to recognize what those big boy rules are. Those with the gold make the rules. That's the golden rule. Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the National Football League, which is the #1 sport in America. They're making billions of dollars annually, and that is that. And it's time that a lot of these NFL players, as far as I'm concerned, put on their big boy pants and start whining about stuff that you can't change until the next collective bargaining negotiations come around. Damian Woody yesterday got a bit heated with me. That's my big boy. I mean, listen, we ain't going to fight. We know I don't want to commit suicide here. So it's not all I was going to do was talk back to him. That's about all I could do against Damian Woody. But that's my man. That's my brother right there. But let's be clear. He get upset because his whole thing was, you know what, it's not right. Why should Roger Goodell just get to do what he wants to do? We're just supposed to march up to the commissioner's office and do X, Y, and Z. Well, if it's your boss, yeah. I know it's hard, but when we sit up here and we talk about being role models, when we talk about professional athletes having an impact on younger minds and beyond, understand that you're setting an example. Don't set the example that's going to lead somebody down a road to ruin. If you want to sit up there, ladies and gentlemen, and want to follow the NFL players and don't want to listen to your boss and want to stick out your chest and you want to be defiant, you go right ahead and watch where it gets you, because I assure you it's not going to get you where it'll get them in some instances. It's just not wise. Of course Roger Goodell is going to play favorites with his big money players. You know why? Because they're big money players, which means they make big money for the NFL. It's that simple. Grow up and get over it, because it's the real world.
Okay. It's so much more complex than that. You're so wrong, Stephen A. Right. Now, let's start with who Goodell knows and who he doesn't know, okay? I understand you could hear it as a racial thing, maybe, or take it that way, or interpret that Terrell Suggs meant it that way. But if you're the commissioner of the league, and there are 2,500 players, give or take, that you need to know, you can't know them all. You know the quarterbacks. You may know some union reps. You may know some stars here and there, and, you know, the owners and the coaches. I mean, that's only so many people you can know and be intimately familiar with. I'm not blaming Roger Goodell for that. But in terms of what Aaron Rodgers said, he said, if that's the case, in other words, if Goodell has these powers, then we should have done a better job collective bargaining. Now, let's get to the collective bargaining agreement. Stephen A., I totally agree with you about this. They got rolled. The union got stomped out by the NFL in that agreement. It is, I mean, they rolled back the percentage of the money that the players keep. They rolled it back from 57 to 50%. They got everything they wanted, essentially, the NFL. Now, why is that? Because they basically act as a monopoly, de facto monopoly. I mean, in the sense that if you're one of the best football players in the world and you want to make a lot of money, there's only one place to get rich playing football, and that's the NFL. Mm-hmm. They've absorbed everybody else and crowded out the competition everywhere else, so you got to deal with them. And then because there are relatively few guaranteed contracts in the NFL, the players' union isn't that strong. The coffers aren't that deep. They don't have the kind of money to absorb a long-term lockout. Many of the players don't. And so they will vote and they will exert pressure to just get a deal done. But in this case, Stephen A., part of the collective bargaining agreement in which we both agree they got rolled, they've been had. They didn't do a good enough job negotiating. But part of it is that Goodell, in fact, does not have the power to do this, and that's why they want to challenge it. In other words, yeah, we did a bad job, but one of the things we were able to get in this deal, at least as it relates to Harrison and the PED guys, or the accusations from the Al Jazeera report, one of the things we were able to get is you can't just force us to come in and start talking before you've gathered evidence. At least we got that. And that's not good enough for Goodell and them. They're like, no, we're going to do that anyway. So while I agree with you, the NFL won the CBA, no question. Goodell is the boss. Yes, they are not only the biggest sports machine in this country, they're the biggest entertainment entity in this country, if not in the world. A 15 to, what is it, almost $20 billion a year industry now. It's insane. But that doesn't mean that the players don't have the right to do what they're doing, according to the CBA.
I sincerely hope that the vast majority of players, and particularly young minds out there, are not listening to you, because they won't remain employed very, very long. Let's talk about this on a couple of levels. First things first, let me just get this out the way, Molly and Max, as an aside. I was not bringing up race. I'm thinking that Terrell Suggs, there are numerous NFL players who have brought up race when complaining about Roger Goodell and the muscle, the strong arm of the NFL. I remember players in the past mentioning the word slavery. I was the one who debunked all of that, saying that's nonsense. There's no, stop it. It's big, put on your big boy pants. This is about business. Get
Your
over
inference
it.
from
Right,
what he said is that
I'm just saying that, that's number one. Number two, and the most important point. You see, let's think about this. Tom Brady is a superstar. Tom Brady may be the greatest quarterback of the modern day era. Yep. Tom Brady is a 4-time Super Bowl champion. Good looks, GQ, supermodel wife. Still haven't gotten over the runway for to start the Olympics.
She worked it.
She worked it. Woo, she worked it. I mean, all of that stuff. This is Tom Brady. Tom Brady gets associated with all of this. And Goodell came after that man. Goodell did not come after that man, Max Kellerman, Even with the Ted Wells investigation, it was not because of that. There were so many holes in that Ted Wells investigation to put Swiss cheese to shame. Okay, here's what happened. How dare Tom Brady challenge the authority of the NFL? That is what this is about. That is what the fight is about. The NFL Players Association. I respect DeMaurice Smith. I like him. I'm not down with talking to Atala, his deputy, that much. But DeMaurice Smith can talk to me any day of the week. Let me be clear. I respect this man. I like him. I think he's an astute mind. My only issue with him is that he has not mesh the lines. He continues to separate as wide as the ocean labor negotiations with labor relations. He hasn't intertwined them at all. You have to engage in labor relations. You cannot be at odds with the strong arm of the law all the time, where you're butting heads and butting heads and butting heads on everything, and everything becomes a legal issue, because by and large, when it all comes down to it, you're going to end up losing.
I appreciate
and y'all
that
are not
point.
bringing that up.
I appreciate that point. There's something, of course, to that. Basic relationships are important to keep as good as possible. However, the basic premise of your argument, the very pragmatic attitude that because you are very, very likely to lose, in your opinion, you shouldn't fight. Well, in that case, nothing ever gets done. You have to be willing to fight sometimes, even when the odds are against you.
But see, here's where, and I'm going to get a little personal here. Here's where you coming across as a bit phony, Max Kellerman, because Max Kellerman, let me tell you something right now. You will sit up there, and contrary to what people might believe, you could be as combative as anybody. But when it comes to work, you cultivate relationships.
Yes.
You talk to people all the time. And if John Skipper called you and said, I need you in my office, you're not going to go like this. Well, tell me why first.
Yeah,
you know what you're going to do? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to say when. Now, even though you love L.A., if Bob Iger decided that he was going to be in Utah during a blizzard, and he said, Max Kellerman, I need you to get your behind to Utah, you'll find out when you get here how much you want to make a bet you on the phone, whether it's your manager or the travel agent or whatever. You're going to get your behind out there. Why? Because the boss called you. That is the bottom line.
Yeah, number one, you're right. Number two, it's because we got good commissioners at ESPN.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
We have commissioners that we're not at odds with.
Wait a minute. Oh, trust me.
Okay.
I've always had moments where I'm at odds with anybody, okay? But when the boss calls, I'm going to come and talk to him. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to sign papers and do
in this case,
what they
he's
say.
not the boss.
Wait a minute.
He's acting as law enforcement, not the boss.
Well, that's what I mean by the boss.
Well, okay, but as I said yesterday, if the cops say we want you to answer questions, and they start rattling handcuffs to intimidate you, you can say time out. No, am I under arrest or not?
Wait a minute.
I got rights.
Hold on, time out. You might do that unless you're fearful of getting shot. Then you're going to sit up there. You know what you're going to do? I need to live another day. Let me chill. That's what you're going to do. Why? Because it's the intelligent thing to do. We are sitting up here sticking our chest out and advising people to be unintelligent, stick out their chest.
You may have said it would have been intelligent. You might have said it would have been intelligent for Muhammad Ali just to take the step forward in the draft, and they would have taken care of him, and he'd have been okay, and he wouldn't have lost 4 years of his career. But the reason we remember Muhammad Ali today is not only because he beat Sonny Liston and Joe Frazier and George Foreman and everyone, but because he said to the government of the United States,
ask Muhammad Ali and his family what he suffered.
Sure.
What he suffered.
And then ask them if it was worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it now, but at the time, how was he feeling?
I don't know if this is the same type of cause we have right here.
You're saying it takes courage.
I don't know. This is a fair comparison
because you're bringing up Muhammad Ali. I'm bringing up James Harrison.
Not Muhammad Ali.
We're going PEDs. We're going a whole other issue.
James Harrison also said he come to my house.
Stay focused, people.
Please,
stay focused.
Stop it.
That was a great debate, though. When we come back, we're going to go on the field. The Seahawks played second fiddle to the Cardinals in the NFC West last season. But are they getting plenty of respect heading into 2016? We will explain when we come back.
It's lit. The real